Welcome back to CEEN Caribbean News. It's now time for In Depth. President of the Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, Dr. Warren Smith, says the organization is processing an application concerning the funding of the Caribbean Court of Justice. In an interview with CEEN reporter George Davis on the sidelines of the 37th CARICOM Heads of Government Conference in Guyana, Dr. Smith revealed that certain funding commitments made by some member countries have not been honored, necessitating the approach to the CDB. In this episode of In Depth, Dr. Smith also addresses the state of the economies of borrowing member countries 9 years after the onset of the global recession.
Speaking with Dr. Warren Smith, he is head of the Caribbean Development Bank, and there are a lot of things happening in the global economy that his perspective surely is being anticipated on. Dr. Smith, let's start with Brexit first. The leaders have spoken on where things are now. It's a very fluid situation, and so no concrete position can be taken. But insofar as the resident of CARICOM is looking on and is anticipating what may happen, should anyone have any real reason to fear the worst?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here this afternoon. I think you characterized it correctly. The whole situation with respect to Brexit is very, very fluid. Someone put it very aptly, I think, when they said the only thing that's certain about Brexit is the uncertainty. My take on the referendum decision of the British people is that it's an untimely one, it's an unfortunate development, but it's their sovereign right to make that type of decision. What we in the Caribbean need to do is to position ourselves to be able to protect ourselves as much as is possible from negative fallout in the areas of trade, aid, and so on, whilst also positioning ourselves to be able to take advantage of any new opportunities which might arise. In short, what I'm saying is that we can't just wait for events to unfold. We need to monitor very closely what is happening. We need to put on our thinking caps, so to speak, and try to understand the unfolding environment and move proactively to both protect our interests whilst also to pursue opportunities that might present themselves to us.
Many people are looking and saying, well, the trade relationships will have to be redrawn. And rather, more to the point, it's not that the process will be difficult, the final outcome, but that the negotiation will take very, very long, as it seems typical of negotiation, cross borders and between economic groups. But should persons really legitimately believe that as the rules change and the protracted nature of those negotiations drag on, that we could suffer in the Caribbean as a result?
Well, one caution that I would give is that in my discussion with those who understand more intimately the details of how one might disengage from a bloc like the European Union, is that there is many a slip between cup and lip. We really don't know whether it will even become a reality at this stage. My sense is that there is a very, very strong possibility that the will of the British people as expressed through the referendum will ultimately become a reality. But there are a number of processes that have to be followed before that becomes the reality that we anticipate. I'm in two minds, really, as to whether a protracted negotiation is in our best interest. I am inclined to the position that markets do not like uncertainty. And we're an open economy. We depend on some kind of stability in international markets. And we're going to be adversely impacted by volatility in the value of the pound sterling. We're going to be impacted adversely by a wait-and-see position in the European countries. Right at this point, we have several aid and trade agreements. We have the EPA trade agreement, which is one that we have not exploited. In my personal view, we haven't exploited it as well as we should have. But it is my hope that even with the departure of the United Kingdom, that some kind of a continued trading relationship with Europe will remain, and that we'll be able to take better advantage of it than we have up to this point. The aid component, we need to start to have discussions with the Europeans themselves to protect our interests as far as aid is concerned. The United Kingdom has provided a lot of the financial assistance to the funds that the Caribbean region benefits from, so that we could anticipate that with the departure of the United Kingdom, our share of those resources could diminish. We need to work hard to ensure that regardless of where they come from, whether there is increased assistance from the United Kingdom in order to make up for whatever shortfall there might be from Europe, remains in place, so that we as a region do not suffer as a consequence. It's very, very complex, and I don't want to sound like I'm a prophet, but our responsibility as the Regional Development Bank is to ensure that we keep ourselves on top of developments, and that we communicate and share with our shareholding governments our perspective on these matters, and that we provide them with the financial assistance to themselves be able to be proactive in protecting themselves from any fallout.
9 years after the financial sector fallout, when I say sector, the global financial meltdown more correctly, Dr. Smith, the world economy is yet to really recover. There are offshoots and there are green shoots, but some green shoots this month look like brown stubs 3 months down the line. In terms of the Caribbean and borrowing member countries, to be specific, members of the CDB, what's the overall shape there in vis-a-vis to say 2009, when the effects of what happened in 2007 had gripped in?
Well, what are the facts? The facts are that in many respects the world economy has recovered. It perhaps has not recovered as robustly as we would like it to have, and it has recovered perhaps in a somewhat uneven way. And we are beginning to see signs of regression or growth reductions in some key economies. Europe, the European group, has experienced some amount of decline. Asia is the area that has been most worrisome, because Asia has played a key role in driving, China in particular, has played a key role in driving world economic growth. So to the extent that China is slowing down, and when we talk about slowing down here, we're talking about maybe 1.5, maximum 2% reduction in growth of very, very high order.
Yeah. From 7.5 to 7.
That's right. So let's not overstate the case, but there is no question that it's having a negative drag, mainly on commodity prices, which many of our countries in the Caribbean here have benefited from substantially, including Guyana, where we are having this discussion this afternoon. So yes, the world economy is slowing. The challenge that the Caribbean has had is that our recovery has been perhaps the slowest of the country groupings in the world. When you compare us with the world as a whole, our recovery has been much slower. When you compare us with other small island developing states, we are also recovering more slowly than they have. So we're not in a stellar position. If you get more granular and you look at us state by state, country by country, the picture is somewhat mixed. Up until recently, as we heard in the discussion this morning, those countries which were primarily commodity dependent, Guyana, Suriname, Belize to some degree, and Trinidad and Tobago, were the ones that were doing very well. So we had what we called sort of two-tier type growth. Those that were service dependent, mainly on tourism and financial services, were having a bit of a tougher time. What we're starting to see now is a reversal of that position. Tourism is doing very well generally in the Caribbean. There's a lot of investment taking place in the tourism sector and the attraction sector in many of our countries, and we're starting to see fairly aggressive growth in that sector. Part of the challenge for us, and the challenge in a country like Jamaica, is that there isn't a sufficient interconnectivity between the tourism sector and the other economic sectors in the country. That's a big challenge, but it also represents a big opportunity.
So that issue of linkages?
The issue of linkages. I spoke to it when I addressed my shareholders in Montego Bay. And I feel very passionately about it. It represents, to some degree, low-hanging fruit. It is an internal export market, in a manner of speaking. So we do not need to be shipping our goods any far distance to be able to take advantage of that market. So it's incumbent upon us to get our act together so that we optimize the linkage between our tourism sector, which is growing very nicely, and in which you have large numbers of people consuming large amounts of food and beverages, but also with the increase in room stock, you need things like furnishings and all the other things that go along with outfitting a hotel property. Real opportunity for us to take advantage. So, where are we at now? The growth that we are seeing has come against the backdrop of some very, very tough fiscal and debt adjustments that pretty much all of our countries have had to go through. Some of them, like Jamaica, have the adjustment has been more stringent perhaps than it has been in others, in part because we have been somewhat tardy in taking the very, very tough decisions that were absolutely necessary. It has delivered a lot of pain upon our people, and those who have suffered are looking now to benefit from a robust economic recovery. That is the political and social challenge that we face. Our people, like anybody else in the world, aspires to an improvement in the standard of living, not only for themselves but also for their children, and that is their right. We in the development business have a responsibility to work with our governments to help them to implement the right policies, to build the appropriate infrastructure, and also to develop the right strategies